10 Down WJ presents Shadows of Grace, A Journey Back to Light. Chapter 1. The Echoes of Silence. In a small town where the sun rarely shone through the thick clouds of despair, the echoes of silence were deafening. The community, once vibrant with laughter and joy, now wore a shroud of moral decay. Families were broken, friendships were strained, and a pervasive sense of hopelessness hung in the air like fog. Among the townsfolk, there was a growing awareness that something was deeply wrong, yet few dared to speak of it. Sarah, a single mother in her 30s, sat on her porch, staring into the distance. She had spent years trying to shield her 2 children from the harsh realities of life. But the truth was unavoidable. Her own childhood had left scars that ran deep. Memories of betrayal and violation haunted her. The laughter of her children felt like a bittersweet reminder of what she had lost. As she watched them play, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was not only a victim but also a contributor to the cycle of sin and brokenness. She recalled the words she had heard in church, "All we like sheep have gone astray." The weight of her own secret agendas and motives pressed heavily on her heart. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. One evening, Sarah found herself at a local gathering where the air was thick with tension. People were talking about the rising issues in their community: drug abuse, teenage pregnancies, and the normalization of behaviors that once would have been unthinkable. Among them was Mark, a charismatic man whose words resonated with many. "We've become numb to sin," Mark declared passionately. "We've turned our backs on God, and now we're suffering the consequences. It's time we acknowledge our own sins and seek forgiveness." His fervor sparked a flicker of hope in Sarah's heart, but she knew that confronting their realities would require vulnerability and courage. Chapter 3. The Confession. That night, Sarah lay awake, wrestling with her thoughts. The realization struck her. She needed to confess her sins, not just to God, but to herself and those she loved. She had been living in denial, allowing her past to dictate her present. It was time to break the cycle. The next Sunday, she attended church, her heart pounding. As the pastor spoke about repentance and grace, tears streamed down her face. The congregation was filled with broken people, each carrying their own burdens. Sarah realized she was not alone in her struggles. She stood up, her voice trembling but resolute. "I've been hiding from my past. I've let my pain define me, but today I choose to seek forgiveness. I want to break free from the chains of sin that have held me captive for too long." Chapter 4. The Turning Point. Sarah's confession ignited a movement within the community. People began to share their stories of abuse, addiction, and the shame that had kept them silent. It was a painful but necessary process. As they opened up, they discovered the power of vulnerability and the healing that comes from community. Mark organized weekly gatherings where people could come together to share their experiences and support one another. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of purpose, and for the first time in years, hope began to blossom. Chapter 5. A New Path. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah found herself drawn to God in ways she had never experienced before. She studied the scriptures, seeking wisdom and guidance. She learned about grace, forgiveness, and the transformative power of love. Every day became an opportunity for growth and renewal. Through her journey, she discovered that healing was not a linear process. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but she pressed on, leaning into her faith. She also began to mend broken relationships, reaching out to those she had hurt and those who had hurt her. Chapter 6. The Ripple Effect. The changes in Sarah's life began to ripple through her family and the community. Her children noticed the shift in her demeanor. She was more present, more engaged. They felt safe to share their own struggles, knowing that their mother was on a journey of healing. Others in the community began to take notice as well. The gatherings grew in size, and people from all walks of life came together to seek redemption. The conversations that had once been taboo became a platform for understanding and support. Chapter 7. The Battle Within. Yet, as the community began to heal, darkness still lingered. Sarah faced the reality that not everyone was ready to confront their past. Some resisted the call to change, preferring the comfort of their vices. The temptation to slip back into old habits loomed over her, whispering lies of defeat. One evening, as Sarah sat in her living room, she felt an overwhelming sense of despair. The weight of the world pressed down upon her, and she questioned her ability to make a difference. In that moment of vulnerability, she turned to God in prayer, seeking strength and guidance. Chapter 8. The Power of Forgiveness. It was during a community gathering that Sarah witnessed the power of forgiveness in action. A woman named Lisa, who had been a victim of abuse, stood up to share her story. Her courage inspired others to speak out, and in that moment, tears flowed freely. "I've spent years carrying the burden of shame," Lisa confessed. "But today, I choose to forgive those who have wronged me. I refuse to let my past define my future." The room erupted in applause, and Sarah felt a surge of hope. Forgiveness was not just a concept, it was a lifeline. It had the power to break chains and set people free. Chapter 9. A New Beginning. As the seasons changed, so did the community. The moral decay that once threatened to consume them began to recede. Families were restored, friendships were mended, and a sense of purpose emerged. People were embracing righteousness and seeking a relationship with God. Sarah's journey of healing had not only transformed her life but had also ignited a movement of change. Together, they were rebuilding their lives on a foundation of faith, love, and accountability. Chapter 10. The Light Shines Through. Years later, as Sarah stood before a group of young people, she reflected on the journey they had taken together. The darkness that had once engulfed their town was now illuminated by the light of hope. She spoke passionately about the importance of acknowledging their past while embracing the future. "Each one of us has a story," she said, her voice steady. "But our stories do not have to end in despair. We have a choice to seek forgiveness, to turn away from darkness, and to walk in the light. Together, we can rebuild, renew, and restore our lives." Epilogue. The Legacy of Grace. As Sarah looked into the eyes of the young people before her, she saw the potential for change. They were not defined by their past but rather shaped by the choices they made today. With every confession, every act of forgiveness, and every moment of vulnerability, they were building a legacy of grace. In the years that followed, the community continued to flourish. The cycle of sin that had once threatened to consume them had been replaced by a culture of healing and hope. Sarah's story became a testament to the power of faith and the transformative nature of God's love. In the end, the journey was not just about healing from the past, it was about embracing the future with open hearts and unwavering faith. And in that light, the shadows of grace shone brightly, illuminating the path for generations to come. 10 Down WJ, where creativity meets impact. 10 Down WJ, ENT.